Okay class, for Math 8 Quarter 2 Week 5, our topic is all about conditional statements. Okay, so for learning task 1, your task is in a conditional statement, identify the hypothesis and the conclusion. Okay, what is first conditional statement? So when you say conditional statement, it has two parts. The if part or the if statement, which is the hypothesis, and then the then part or the then statement, which is the conclusion. So for example, number 1, if you will study your lesson, then surely you will pass. So of course, our hypothesis is the if statement, you will study your lesson, and our conclusion, the then statement, surely you will pass. So for example, number 2, if it rains, then I stay home. So our hypothesis, it rains, then our conclusion, I stay home. So for learning task 2, change the statements to an if, then, or conditional statements. Identify the hypothesis and the conclusion. So for number 1, triangle has 3 sides. Okay. So, ang kanyang if-then statement, if the figure is a triangle, then it has 3 sides. So as you can notice, yung ating if statement ay kinuha natin dito sa subject ng sentence, at ang ating then statement ay kinuha natin sa predicate ng sentence. Then it has 3 sides. So for example, number 2, rhombus is a quadrilateral. Of course, our subject here is rhombus, and our predicate here is a quadrilateral. So our if then statement, if the figure is a rhombus, then it is a quadrilateral. So pwede din namang if it is a rhombus, then it is a quadrilateral. Or if it is a triangle, then it has 3 sides. Okay, for number 3, square has 4 equal sides. So if the figure is a square, then it has 4 equal sides. Okay, so let us have now the hypothesis and the conclusion. Of course, our hypothesis here, the figure is a triangle, and our conclusion has 3 sides. For number 2, our hypothesis, the figure is a rhombus, and our conclusion, it is a quadrilateral. Number 3, the figure is a square, it has 4 equal sides, is the conclusion. Okay, so for letter B, determine if the conditional statement is true. If not, give a counter example. So a conditional statement has a truth value. It's either true or false. So dalawa lang naman yun. So kung hindi siya true, it is false. So when you say, if the truth value of a conditional statement is true, it must always be true. And that only happens when the hypothesis and the conclusion is true. Okay, so basta ang conclusion ay true, so the conditional statement is true. Okay, so uulitin ko ha. Ang conditional statement is true if the conclusion is true. So kahit ang hypothesis ay true or false, so basta ang conclusion is true, so the conditional statement is true. Okay, magiging true lang din siya kapag ang hypothesis at conclusion ay parehong false. Okay, so halimbawa naman, kapag ang hypothesis ay true, ang conclusion ay false, so the conditional statement is false. Okay. So, ulitin ko ulit ha. Kapag ang hypothesis, okay, hypothesis and conclusion. Kapag ang hypothesis is true and the conclusion is false, ang conditional statement is false. Okay, kapag ang hypothesis naman ay false, pero ang conclusion ay true, still the conditional statement is true. Okay, kapag true ang hypothesis, true ang conclusion, of course, the conditional statement is true. Okay. Kapag halimbawa naman, ang hypothesis is false at ang conclusion is false also, the conditional statement is true. Okay. So, yan yung rules sa conditional statement. Okay. So, pag false ang conditional statement, magbibigay kayo ng counterexample. Okay. So, counterexample is at least one example that proves a conditional statement is false. Okay. So, letter B, ayan yung gagawin nyo. Determine if the conditional statement is true. If not, give a counterexample. So, number 1, if it is a square, then it has 4 sides. So, analyze. Lahat ba ng square may 4 sides? Is it always true that square has 4 sides? So, that is true. Okay. Number 2, if you are tall, then you are a basketball player. So, do you agree that all tall people are basketball player? Okay, so this statement is false kasi hindi naman lahat ng tall people are basketball players. Okay, katulad ng ating mga beauty queen, matatangkad sila, but okay, they are not basketball players. So this is false. Since not all tall people are basketball player like beauty queen Catriona Gray. So yan yung ating counterexample. For number 3, if it can fly, then it is a bird. Okay, so analyze. Lahat ba ng nakakalipad ay ipon? So this is false since cockroach can fly but it is not a bird. Mosquito can fly but it is not a bird. So yan yung ating counterexample. For learning task 3, illustrate the following conditional statement in Venn diagram. Okay, so Venn diagram can use to illustrate conditional statement. Things that satisfy the hypothesis must be inside the things that satisfies the conclusion. So, ang bigger portion dito is yung conclusion at ang hypothesis ay nasa loob ng conclusion. Say, for example, if you are a guitarist, then you are a musician. So, kung marunong ka mag-gitara, you are in the group of musicians. Okay, so ang ating bigger part dyan ay musician, ang ating guitarist ay nasa loob ng grupo ng musicians since guitarists are musicians. For number 2, if it is a square, then it is a parallelogram. Okay. So, ang bigger part natin dyan ay parallelogram. Ang ating, okay, smaller part, yung nasa loob, is square. Okay. So, square here is the hypothesis. So, siya yung nasa loob. Parallelogram is the conclusion. So, siya yung bigger part. Same with this one. Ang ating hypothesis is guitarist. So, siya yung nasa loob. Ang ating conclusion is musician. Siya yung nasa labas. Okay. Letter B, interchange the conclusion and the hypothesis. Pagbabalik ta rin nyo lang. See, for example, number 1, if it is a square, then it is a parallelogram. Okay. So, ang hypothesis natin dyan is it is a square. Ang ating conclusion, it is a parallelogram. Ngayon, pagbabalik ta rin nyo, etong it is a parallelogram ngayon, ang gagawin yung hypothesis. Okay. Then, ang conclusion nyo ngayon, ang gagawin nyo na, yung hypothesis ngayon, ang gagawin nyo na conclusion. Okay. So, interchange. So, if it is a parallelogram, then it is a square. Okay. So, pagbabalik na rin nyo lang. So, this is not true since not all parallelograms are square. So, after na interchange, identify whether it is true or false. So, this is not true since not all parallelograms are square. Okay, hindi lahat ng parallelogram ay square kasi ang rectangle parallelogram din. Yan. So, not all parallelograms are square. Ang rhombus parallelogram din. So, number 2, if it is a bird, then it can fly. So, kung babalik na rin natin, if it can fly, then it is a bird. Okay, so this is false. If it can fly, then it is a bird. Hindi lahat ng nakakalipad ay ibon. So this is not true since not all things or animals that can fly is a bird. Okay, so that's all for week 5.